This is the final video in this mini-series looking at business research and the Sustainable Development Goals. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the process of linking business research to the Sustainable Development Goals and propose a 5-step framework to do this effectively. The process of linking business research to Sustainable Development Goals. In the previous videos in this mini-series, I've discussed the value in linking business research to the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs for short. Then in the second video, some of the SDGs commonly linked to business research and how they are linked from my experience. In this video, I'm going to discuss some thoughts as to the process of how you can link your business research to SDGs. Linking SDGs to your business research can be useful to explain and articulate the wider implications and impact of your research. This can be useful when highlighting and justifying the practical value and contribution of your research and allow the extension of the relevance of your research. It can achieve this through helping to open up your research to a wider audience than maybe just those in a particular company or industry. In this video, I'm going to propose 5 steps in the process of linking your research to SDGs. The first step in the process of linking your research to the SDGs likely involves identifying the relevant SDG or SDGs, if there's more than one, for your specific research. In the previous video in this series, I discussed some of the most relevant SDGs to business research and provided some examples of how different business topics link and support SDGs. Although of course it is important to get a good understanding of the different SDGs, as the nature of business research is quite eclectic and diverse, which means business research could potentially link to any of the SDGs. Once the relevant SDGs have been identified, the useful next step can be to consider the potential impact and implications of your research on the SDGs. At this point, it can be useful to consider both the direct implications of your research, which come from the specific results, but also indirect implications, which might stem from your research in terms of recommendations, which can be drawn from the results. Whilst the direct results of your research might not directly link to the SDGs, the recommendations which you can draw from the results might support achieving SDGs and sustainability. It might be valuable to consider the linkage between the results and what they lead to in practice in a business or industry, and in turn how this might lead to achieving an SDG. The third step is communicating how the research relates to and impacts an SDG or SDGs. The communication of the impact and relationship to SDGs is an important step to ensure that the reader understands the linkage and implications of your work in relation to sustainability. Consideration should be given as to how central the link is in your argument, as this will probably determine how and where you discuss the link between your research and SDGs. For example, is it only discussed in your conclusion, or where you discuss the practical implications of your work? Or is the link more central to your work and communicated in the introduction of your work, when explaining the value of the research, and in the conclusion It is important to detail what the work means in practice for SDGs and how these suggestions have been derived. For example, does the research directly demonstrate what is being proposed, or is it an extension or an extrapolation of the findings? Being explicit on this helps the conclusions not overextend beyond the empirical results which you're presenting, and helps the reader understand how you're drawing the link between your research and the SDGs. As a fourth step, it's important to promote the relevance of the research findings on the SDGs. To do this, it can be useful to find an impactful way to share and disseminate how your research informs the SDGs. This could be done through an infographic or drafting a succinct paper focusing on the sustainability angle of your work. This could potentially be shared with business or industry as a way to get them to consider their practice and the implications for sustainability. Doing this could lead to further dissemination of your work and a wider audience, potentially increasing engagement with the research you've spent much time developing. And the fifth and final step which I would suggest is to ensure that you detail how future research in your field could further inform and achieve SDGs. As always, when providing directions for future research, try and be as specific as possible, thus providing a map for the next person to follow to provide a contribution to the field. So let's conclude. Linking SDGs to your business research can be of value both for yourself and for the reader, as it can explain the wider implications and impact of your research. In this video, I've proposed 5 steps to try and link business research to SDGs. The first step is to identify the relevant SDG or SDGs for your research. The second step is to consider the researcher's impact and implications on your chosen SDG. Once you've done this, it's important to communicate how your research relates to and impacts the SDG. And part of this communication could be as a fourth step to promote the relevance of the research findings on SDGs. So you might want to consider a different mechanism to do this, potentially as an infographic or as a small appended document or a separate paper which can be promoted and disseminated with relevant stakeholders. And finally, to ensure that future research in your field continues to consider sustainability in their research, it is useful to detail how future research in your field could further inform and achieve SDGs.